2026 has begun. All year lists have been reset, and so let's take a look at how many and which rare species have already been seen. My goal this year is to keep track of how the year listers could be doing. There are 325 species that do not require submission, and for the sake of simplicity, we'll assume that you could potentially see all of them. To break the year list record, you would then need to see 35 submission species. We therefore start with the Bufflehead. Not the smallest duck in the world, but it does rank within the top 10. The species breeds mainly in Canada and Alaska, and winters in the United States, Mexico and Cuba. It belongs to the family of ducks, and more specifically to the subfamily that includes eiders, scoters and mergansers. It is in the same genus as the common goldeneye and Barrow's goldeneye, and just like those species, it mainly breeds in tree cavities. The first Dutch record of the species was found in 2004, and the bird ultimately remained until 2020. This individual in the Pallas harbour represents the 9th accepted record of the species in the Netherlands. This bird is a female, recognizable by its small size and overall dark appearance and a clearly visible white cheek patch. At first glance, it most closely resembles a female harlequin duck, but that species is significantly larger and also shows a white patch at the base of the bill. If you plan to go and see the bird for yourself, it's good to know that it can sometimes sit very close to the shore and can then be surprisingly difficult to locate. Also still present in Flevoland is the Pygmy cormorant at Nature Park Lelystad. As the name suggests, this is a miniature version of our regular cormorant, with a smaller bill but a relatively much longer tail. This bird has now been present in the same small park for over a year, although it can sometimes be hard to find. Pygmy cormorants are mainly resident birds of Eastern Europe and Western Asia, but in recent years dozens of birds have appeared during summer in countries such as France and Germany. Great Britain, however, is still waiting for its first record. In the Netherlands, 14 records have now been accepted, although this individual represents the 12th case. The first Dutch record was found in January 1999 in Utrecht. The Pygmy cormorant belongs to the cormorant family and is placed in the genus Microcarbo, which also includes 4 other small cormorant species. The species prefers water bodies surrounded by dense vegetation. On Texel, the black-faced bunting is still present, a bird that was found at the end of December, when 2 birders were cycling towards the Neos harbour. In the autumn of 2025, an unprecedented number of birds of this species were recorded in the Netherlands and northwestern Europe. Up to 2011, there had been 4 Dutch records. In 2025, 6 more were added, with the Texel bird being the 6th and so far the most recent. The bird has clearly found a good spot, as it is seen daily in a garden bordering a green field where it forages for food. Attempts were made to lure the bird away from the garden by scattering food elsewhere, but the bird wasn't fooled. Fortunately, the residents don't mind at all that so many people have come to see the bird. At first glance, the bird closely resembles a juvenile reed bunting, but besides some subtle plumage features, the beautiful pink lower mandible also stands out. The species breeds in wetlands in East Asia and winters in Southeast Asia. The call is a sharp ticking sound, reminiscent of that of a song thrush. The black-faced bunting belongs to the genus Eurasian, which includes 44 Old World bunting species. The most closely related buntings that are occasionally seen in the Netherlands are the little bunting and rustic bunting. Personally, in all the hectic rush of the twitch, I only managed to record a short clip in which the bird is clearly visible. So if the weather becomes a bit more pleasant this spring and the bird is still present, I'll definitely give it another try. So those were 3 twitchable submission species. The 4th submission species currently present in our country is of course the spectacled eider, but this bird is still in wildlife care and therefore not twitchable and not countable for the year list. We can safely say that the bird was taken in just in time. It was that week. Even after more than a week in care, the situation is hopeful but still critical. This means that despite positive developments, the bird has received deworming treatment, is finally gaining some weight and is drinking and eating on its own again, at least occasionally, although it is still being supplementally fed via a tube. What will ultimately happen if the bird survives and is strong enough to return to the wild is something I don't yet know. In some cases, stable isotope analysis can be used to determine where in the world a bird has fed. For an extreme vagrant like the spectacled eider, this could potentially provide more certainty about its origin. However, since the bird has now spent a long time in the Netherlands and has already molted its feathers, the outcome of such research would most likely show that the bird is fed in the Netherlands, which is logical, but would tell us nothing about its original origin. Moreover, we don't even know when the bird actually arrived here. It could have arrived months earlier without being noticed, for example, was staying far out in the Wadden Sea. Whether DNA research could still determine if the bird is a descendant of birds once kept in captivity in the Netherlands is also unclear to me, and whether breeders would actively cooperate with such research is very much questionable. Let's now briefly go over some noteworthy non-submission species. We start with the black-winged kite, nowadays almost a guarantee for national year listers, but still a joy to watch every single time. At the moment, an unprecedented number of at least 5 birds is wintering in the Netherlands. 1 in the Onlanden, 1 in Vochteloofveen, 1 in Nijverdal, and 2 birds in the Oostvaardersplassen. Although the species already bred in Europe for the first time in the 19th century, its northward expansion has really accelerated only in recent years, with even the first breeding record for Denmark last year. Outside Europe, the species is mainly known as a resident bird of Africa, especially south of the Sahara. The black-winged kite belongs to the subfamily Elaninae, and more specifically to the genus Elanus, which also includes the black-shouldered kite, white-tailed kite, and leather-winged kite. Those other species, by the way, are not expected to ever occur in Europe or the Netherlands. Hume's leaf warbler is another species that nowadays can be added to a year list with remarkable ease. And you don't even have to wait for autumn anymore, because almost every winter 1 or more of these small grey-green birds overwinter here. In 2026, the counter already stands at 5 records. Well-known and much visited birds include those in The Hague and Beek, but the species is also reported regularly near Petten, on the northern tip of Texel, and in Noordwijk. This originally Asian songbird behaves somewhat like a goldcrest, even though it actually belongs to the family of Philoscopus warblers, the same family that includes our chiffchaff and willow warbler. Hume's leaf warbler is the more southerly counterpart of the yellow-browed warbler. It is generally grayer, with usually darker legs, and has a slightly different call. The species breeds around the Himalayan mountain range, and normally winters in Southeast Asia, but in recent years we've seen more and more individuals attempting to overwinter in Europe. Hume's leaf warbler is generally much rarer than the yellow-browed warbler, yet it actually seen more frequently in winter. In 2026, at least 1 yellow-browed warbler is also overwintering in the Netherlands, at the Oostvaardersplassen in the Maashorst. Yellow-browed warblers are most frequently recorded in the Netherlands during the last week of September and the first 2 weeks of October. And even though in some years the species can be relatively common during that period, it remains a highly sought-after bird every single time. Some years we see significantly more than in others, and this is likely partly related to weather patterns in Russia in early autumn. That can sometimes also be an indicator of how many other rare northeastern species we see moving through Europe. But no matter how many pass through in autumn, during the winter the numbers usually remain limited to just 1 or 2 birds. What's interesting is that the third species, that also closely resembles the yellow-browed warbler, the Pallas leaf warbler, can also be found at the same Hofelsplassen in the Maashorst. Where yellow-browed warblers typically appear in late September and early October, Pallas leaf warblers arrive a bit later, mainly during the second half of October and the first half of November. Even so, of this species as well, there is often 1 or few birds overwintering in the Netherlands. The species can be distinguished by the yellow stripe running along the center of the crown, and also by the bright yellow rump patch, the area where the tail meets the body, which really stands out when the bird flutters through the foliage in search of aphids. Also enjoyable were several Eurasian treecreepers of the northern subspecies, and therefore not the Central European subspecies, which has become far less rare in the eastern part of the country. Birds presumed to belong to the northern subspecies, which in some autumns are mainly seen on the Wadden Islands, were now reported at Holwerd and also near Reewijk. At Reewijk, it even involved 2 birds together. The Eurasian treecreeper occurs from Great Britain in the west all the way to Japan in the east, and the species consists of many subspecies. For example, the subspecies found on the British Isles differs from both the Eurasian treecreeper breeding in the Netherlands and the rare northern Eurasian treecreeper. The Eurasian treecreeper belongs to the genus Sergia, which also includes species such as the brown creeper of North America. Next week we'll cover a few more rare non-submission species, so that we don't talk about the same birds every week, and so I can go a bit deeper into the species that are featured. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and see you next time.